try not to upset him.
Okay.
Mr. Sanford, we have a visitor out here for you.
Just a minute.
$1,000 a week on cocaine. $40,000 going into the bank account. It was 1982, and Demond Wilson, the face known to millions of Americans as Lamont Sanford from the series Sanford and Son, was drowning in an addiction that consumed his life while the country still recognized him as a television star. Are you enjoying this story, Demond Wilson? Then help the channel with your subscription. Look, 94. 8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you are part of that group, take the chance and subscribe now. It's free, and that way you'll keep receiving amazing stories from TV shows we still miss. Oh, and don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. He was having extramarital affairs, his marriage to Cicely Johnston was falling apart, and despite all the money he had earned in Hollywood, he was close to what he would later describe as rock bottom. No one watching the reruns of the show, no one who recognized him on the streets, could imagine that the actor behind the character was fighting a debilitating addiction and a profound personal crisis. This is the true story of how Demond Wilson rose to stardom on American television, fell into chemical dependency and personal problems, and then abandoned Hollywood to become an evangelical minister, a transformation he maintains to this day at 78 years old. Grady Demond Wilson was born on October 13, 1946 in Valdosta, Georgia, during an era when racial segregation still dominated the American South and opportunities for black children were severely limited. His mother was 46 years old when she gave birth to him, an unusual circumstance for the time that Wilson would later reflect upon. His parents would remain married for nearly 70 years, providing a model of stability and commitment that Wilson credits as foundational to his own ability to eventually rebuild his life and marriage. The family did not remain in Georgia long, moving to Harlem, New York, when Demond was still young. Harlem in the late 1940s and early 1950s was a cultural melting pot, the beating heart of African-American culture, where jazz echoed through street corners and young artists dreamed of conquering the world. It was in this vibrant and challenging environment that young Demond began discovering his extraordinary talent for performance. His gifts manifested remarkably early. At 4 years old, he made his Broadway debut, an almost unbelievable achievement for someone so young. Wilson studied tap dance and ballet with serious dedication, building technical skills that would serve him throughout his career. By 12, he was dancing at the legendary Apollo Theater in Harlem, the sacred temple where giants like Ella Fitzgerald, James Brown, Billie Holiday, and countless other African-American performers had paved their paths to greatness. The Apollo was not just a venue but a proving ground, and young Demond held his own on that historic stage. Raised as a Catholic, Wilson served as an altar boy and spent summers with his Pentecostal grandmother, Ada Mitchell, in Georgia. The religious influences from both his Catholic upbringing and his grandmother's Pentecostal faith planted seeds that would later become central to his adult life. At one point, the young Wilson even briefly considered entering the Catholic priesthood, demonstrating an early spiritual inclination that would resurface decades later in unexpected ways. But his youth was not just artistic brilliance and spiritual contemplation. At 13, death came calling for the first time. Wilson's appendix ruptured suddenly, a serious medical emergency that brought him to the brink of death. As doctors fought to save him and the young teenager hovered between consciousness and unconsciousness, between this world and the next, Demond made a solemn promise. If God let him live, if he survived this terrible ordeal, Wilson would dedicate part of his life to spiritual service in some form. It was a sincere promise, born from the fear and gratitude of someone who had looked death in the eyes and lived to tell about it. But like so many promises made in moments of desperation, this vow was filed away in Demond's memory and forgotten for decades, buried under layers of ambition, dreams of fame, and the relentless pursuit of success in the entertainment world. God, however, had not forgotten and would eventually come to collect on that promise in ways Demond could never have imagined as a 13-year-old boy in a hospital bed. Recovered from his brush with death, Demond continued developing his artistic talents through his teenage years and into young adulthood. He attended Hunter College briefly, pursuing education alongside his artistic aspirations. But before Hollywood could fully claim him, another kind of hell awaited. In 1966, at 20 years old, Wilson enlisted in the United States Army. It was the height of the Vietnam War, a brutal and controversial conflict that was tearing apart the American nation and killing thousands of young soldiers in distant jungles on the other side of the world. Wilson was assigned to the 4th Infantry Division and sent to Vietnam, where he would face horrors that no amount of military training could adequately prepare him to endure. For 2 years, from 1966 to 1968, Demond served in one of the most dangerous combat zones on the planet, and inevitably the war reached him. He was wounded in combat, carrying physical scars that marked his body and invisible emotional scars that would mark his soul forever. When he finally returned to the United States as a decorated veteran, Demond was a different man from the boy who had departed. He had seen friends die, had faced his own mortality again, and had witnessed the brutality that human beings are capable of when plunged into the chaos of war. These experiences would give him depth as an actor, a gravitas that transcended technique or training, but they also left psychological wounds that would contribute to his future struggles with addiction and self-destructive behavior. Many Vietnam veterans returned home with what we now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder, and while Wilson did not publicly discuss such a diagnosis, the war's impact on him was undeniable and lasting. The discipline and determination he gained from military service, however, also became assets that served him well in the competitive world of entertainment. Back in civilian life, traumatized but determined, Demond plunged back into the world of theater. He began appearing in Broadway and off-Broadway productions, gradually rebuilding his artistic career and catching the attention of agents and casting directors. His talent was undeniable, combining natural charisma with technical skill and a depth of experience that set him apart from other young actors competing for the same roles. Hollywood began calling, and soon Demond was making guest appearances on popular television series. He landed roles in shows like Mission Impossible, where he demonstrated his versatility, and crucially, All in the Family, the groundbreaking Norman Lear sitcom that was revolutionizing American television with its frank treatment of social issues. He also appeared in films during this period, including The Dealing in 1970 and The Organization in 1971, steadily building his resume and reputation in the industry. It was during his appearance on All in the Family, where he played a robber alongside Cleavon Little, that producers Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin truly noticed him. They saw in Wilson something special, a combination of comic timing, screen presence, and authenticity that was rare and valuable. They were developing a new sitcom based on the British series Sanford and Son, a comedy about a junk dealer and his adult son, and they needed to find the perfect actor to play the son. Johnny Brown was being seriously considered for the role, but because of his commitment to Laugh-In, the opportunity fell to Demond Wilson. And in 1972, Wilson's life changed forever when he was cast to play Lamont Sanford in Sanford and Son. The show was an instant sensation. Red Fox, a legendary comedian who was already an established star on the nightclub circuit, known for his raunchy and hilarious routines, played Fred Sanford, the widowed, stubborn, and hilarious father who ran a junk business in the Watts neighborhood of South Central Los Angeles. Demond played Lamont, the son who dreamed of something bigger than spending his life surrounded by junk, but who remained trapped by family responsibilities and the complicated love he felt for his father. The chemistry between Fox and Wilson was magical, a perfect combination of comic timing, genuine affection, and dramatic tension that kept viewers coming back week after week. Their dynamic was the heart of the show, with Fred constantly scheming to get rich quick, while Lamont tried to be the voice of reason, only to inevitably get pulled into his father's harebrained plans. Fred's signature catchphrase, directed at his son, "You big dummy," became part of American cultural lexicon, quoted and parodied endlessly. Sanford and Son was not just funny, it was revolutionary. It was one of the first sitcoms to feature a predominantly African-American cast in primetime, addressing racial and social issues with sharp humor and deep humanity. The show tackled topics like racism, generational conflicts, economic struggles, and community dynamics with an honesty that was rare on television at the time. Norman Lear, who had already broken ground with All in the Family, was once again pushing boundaries and proving that American audiences were ready for more sophisticated, relevant comedy that reflected real life rather than escaping from it. The program opened doors for other series like Good Times, The Jeffersons, and What's Happening, shaping the landscape of American television and proving that stories about black families could resonate with audiences of all races. Sanford and Son consistently ranked among the top-rated shows on television, reaching millions of viewers every week and making Demond Wilson one of the most recognizable faces in America. For 6 seasons and 135 episodes, Demond Wilson lived and breathed Lamont Sanford. He appeared in all but one of the show's 136 total episodes, an impressive consistency that demonstrated his commitment and the producer's recognition of his value to the series. The only episode he missed was due to unavoidable circumstances, not any conflict or dispute. During the show's peak years from 1972 to 1977, Wilson was earning substantial money, with his salary eventually reaching $40,000 per week during the height of the show's success. For a young black actor from Harlem, this was an almost unimaginable fortune, wealth beyond anything his parents or grandparents could have dreamed of. He had achieved the American dream in spectacular fashion, rising from poverty and struggle to become a wealthy television star beloved by millions. But behind the spectacular success, tensions were fermenting that would eventually poison relationships and contribute to Wilson's downfall. In 1974, during the show's 4th season, Red Fox abruptly walked off the set in a salary dispute with the producers. Fox felt he deserved more money and better treatment, given the show's enormous success, and when negotiations broke down, he simply left. Wilson suddenly found himself thrust into the lead role, carrying the show alongside Whitman Mayo, who played Grady, Fred's friend who temporarily moved in to help Lamont run the business. NBC aired 3 episodes that had been filmed before Fox's departure, but they ultimately made his return episode the season premiere when he came back after missing 9 episodes total. Although Fox returned and the show continued successfully, the incident planted seeds of resentment and revealed cracks in the relationship between Wilson and Fox that would eventually widen into an unbridgeable chasm. Wilson had proven he could carry the show during Fox's absence, but he also felt the slight of not being consulted or informed about major decisions affecting his professional life. But in those years when the money was flowing like a river and the show was dominating the ratings, such concerns seemed distant and manageable. Demond Wilson had everything he had ever dreamed of having: fame, fortune, recognition, admiration from millions of fans. He married Cicely Johnston, a flight attendant who had become a model on May 3, 1974. They began building a life together and eventually would have 6 children. From the outside, Wilson's life looked perfect, the epitome of Hollywood success. But as he would discover in the most painful way possible, having everything on the outside means nothing if you are empty and struggling on the inside. The cocaine addiction began, as it almost always does, subtly and innocuously. A line here and there at Hollywood parties, a way to relax after long hours of filming, a means of fitting in with other actors and producers who also used. Cocaine was everywhere in Hollywood in the 1970s, practically part of the culture, and it was easy to rationalize using it as just part of the lifestyle. But cocaine is a seductive and treacherous mistress, and what began as occasional recreational use rapidly transformed into debilitating dependence. By the early 1980s, Wilson was spending $1,000 per week on his cocaine habit, an enormous sum even by Hollywood standards, and even for someone earning $40,000 per week. That meant that over 25% of his income during the show's peak was going directly to drug purchases, money that was literally going up his nose and disappearing into chemical oblivion. But the financial cost was the least of the damage the addiction was causing. The drug was affecting his judgment, his relationships, his integrity, his sense of self. Wilson began having extramarital affairs, betraying Cicely Johnston, the woman who had left her career to support him and who was bearing his children. The combination of cocaine and infidelity was toxic, poisoning his marriage and creating a web of lies and deception that grew more complex and untenable with each passing day. His wife knew something was terribly wrong, and the trust that is foundational to any marriage was being systematically destroyed. Wilson was trapped in a classic downward spiral, using cocaine to cope with the guilt and stress of his double life, only to create more problems that required more cocaine to forget or numb. It was a dance with death, and Wilson was moving dangerously close to the edge of a cliff that would destroy everything he had built. When Sanford and Son finally ended in 1977, after 6 successful seasons, Wilson should have been on top of the world. He had starred in one of the most popular sitcoms of the decade, had become a household name, and should have secured his financial future and positioned himself for continued success in Hollywood. But the reality was far different and far more complicated. The cancellation came after Red Fox was hired by rival network ABC to do a variety show called The Red Fox Comedy Hour. The move, combined with Sanford's ratings beginning to decline from their peak, led NBC to cancel the series. For Wilson, the end came suddenly and without warning. More hurtfully, he learned about the show's cancellation not from Fox directly, not from the producers in a respectful meeting, but from a newspaper reporter in the hallways of NBC. This humiliation cut deeply and planted a resentment that would never fully heal. Although Wilson later said he forgave Fox and that they never had a direct argument or confrontation, the wound remained open and painful. CBS immediately offered Wilson a $1 million contract to star in a new series called Baby I'm Back, a significant amount that demonstrated his commercial value and popularity following Sanford and Son's success. The sitcom centered on a husband who returns to his family after a 7-year absence, creating comedic complications as he tries to reintegrate into their lives. Wilson threw himself into the new project, hoping it would prove he could succeed without Red Fox and establish himself as a star in his own right, rather than just half of a famous duo. But the series was a disappointment, failing to capture audiences the way Sanford and Son had. After just 13 episodes, CBS cancelled the show, a devastating professional blow that Wilson took personally. The failure seemed to validate fears that perhaps he had been merely a supporting player to Fox's genius, rather than a star capable of carrying a show on his own. Are you enjoying this story, Demon Wilson? Then help the channel with your subscription. Look, 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you are part of that group, take the chance and subscribe now. It's free, and that way you'll keep receiving amazing stories from TV shows we still miss. Oh, and don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. Wilson tried again with The New Odd Couple in 1982 and 1983, an updated version of the classic Neil Simon comedy where he played Oscar Madison, the sloppy sports writer roommate. This series also lasted only 1 season before being cancelled. Each professional failure added pressure and pain to a life already strained by addiction and personal problems. The cocaine use continued and potentially intensified as Wilson tried to cope with disappointment and fading career prospects. The money he had earned during the Sanford years was disappearing rapidly, consumed by the expensive drug habit, poor financial decisions, and the costs of maintaining a Hollywood lifestyle without a steady income to support it. Meanwhile, Red Fox made an attempt to revive Sanford and Son's magic with a new series in 1980, simply titled Sanford. Fox contacted Wilson about reprising his role as Lamont, offering him the chance to return to the character and dynamic that had made them both stars. But Wilson flatly refused, a decision that surprised many in the industry, but which was rooted in the deep hurt he still carried about how the original series had ended. He had not forgotten the humiliation of learning about the show's cancellation from a reporter. He had not forgotten feeling abandoned and disrespected by a man he considered not just a co-star, but a mentor and friend. Red Fox had been Wilson's acting mentor, someone he looked up to and learned from, which made the perceived betrayal even more painful. So when Fox came calling with the revival, Wilson said no. The revival series lasted only 2 seasons, from 1980 to 1981, without the crucial chemistry that Wilson brought to the dynamic. The failure of Sanford without Lamont demonstrated how essential Wilson had been to the original show's success, but by then, the opportunity for reconciliation had passed. The two men who had made television history together, who had created one of the most memorable father-son duos in American pop culture, became practically strangers. Wilson revealed in later interviews that he saw Fox only once, between 1977, when the show ended, and 1991, when Fox died. That single encounter occurred around 1983, when Wilson was playing tennis at the Malibu Racquet Club and was approached by producers about participating in a special commemorating Fox's 50th anniversary in show business. Wilson had not spoken to Fox since 1977, 6 years of complete silence between two men who had once worked together daily and shared something special. Wilson called the club where Fox was playing, and they arranged to meet at Red's office. But the meeting was cold and uncomfortable. Fox was, in Wilson's words, less than affable, less than friendly. The warmth and camaraderie they had once shared was gone, replaced by awkwardness and unspoken resentments. Wilson advised the producers to abandon the idea of the anniversary special, knowing that the reunion would be forced and false. That brief, uncomfortable meeting was the last time the two men would ever see each other. When Fox died suddenly on October 11, 1991, while rehearsing for a new sitcom, Wilson carried the weight of a reconciliation that would never happen. Words never spoken. Forgiveness offered, but connection never restored. But before Fox's death closed that chapter forever, Wilson had already begun the most radical transformation of his life. In 1982, when he was closest to rock bottom, when his cocaine addiction was at its worst and his marriage was in shambles from the drugs and the affairs, Demon Wilson experienced what he described as a profound spiritual awakening. He remembered the promise he had made as a 13-year-old boy when his appendix ruptured and he nearly died. In that moment of crisis, facing the potential loss of everything that mattered, Wilson cried out to God for help, begging for strength to change his life and find a different path. He began studying the Bible with obsessive intensity, reading and rereading scriptures, seeking answers and guidance in sacred texts. He sought ministerial counseling, talking with religious leaders who could help him understand and process what he was experiencing spiritually and emotionally. Slowly, gradually, Wilson began to rebuild his life on a new foundation, one based not on fame and money and Hollywood success, but on faith and service and spiritual purpose. Wilson later proclaimed that the old Demon Wilson was dead, a dramatic statement that reflected the totality of his transformation. The man who had lived for cocaine and casual sex and Hollywood parties was gone, replaced by someone fundamentally different. In 1984, Wilson became an ordained minister, a decision that shocked many in Hollywood but which made perfect sense to him as the fulfillment of a promise made decades earlier. The following year, in 1985, he founded Demon Wilson Ministries, headquartered in Laguna Hills, California, dedicating himself completely to preaching the gospel and helping others find the spiritual transformation he had experienced. The change was not superficial or temporary, but complete and permanent. Wilson substantially left Hollywood behind, trading television studios and movie sets for churches and auditoriums where he preached to thousands of people about redemption, transformation, and the power of faith. When Wilson appeared for large-scale evangelistic events, his operation was impressive and professional. His entourage included a secretary to handle logistics, 2 bodyguards for security, another evangelist to support the ministry, a 5-piece band to provide music, and as many as 8 singers to lead worship and perform. Wilson himself joked that it looked like Ringling Brothers Circus when they arrived at a venue, acknowledging the irony of bringing such a production to preach about simplicity and faith. But behind the spectacle was a man genuinely transformed, someone who had found purpose and meaning in serving others and sharing his faith. He preached to audiences as large as 6,000 people, telling his story of addiction and redemption, using his own experiences to illustrate biblical principles and offer hope to others struggling with similar battles. In 1994, Wilson expanded his ministerial work by founding the Restoration House of America, an organization dedicated to providing spiritual guidance and vocational training to former inmates. He wanted to help those whom society had discarded, offering them a second chance and the tools to rebuild their lives, just as he had done. The work gave him deep satisfaction, a sense that he was finally fulfilling the promise he had made to God as a dying teenager. Parallel to his ministry work, Wilson also became a prolific author. He wrote several Christian books addressing his concerns about what he saw as the dangers of the New Age movement. In December 1998, he published The New Age Millennium, an expose of symbols, slogans, and hidden agendas through Cap Publishing and Literary Company LLC. The book was successful enough to go into a second printing, demonstrating that there was an audience interested in his perspective on spiritual matters. In 1999, Wilson showed his versatility by writing 3 children's books, John Newman Smith, Lil Mwande, and Mr. Fish Takes a Wife, each carrying positive messages for young readers. But his most significant and personal literary work came in August 2009 with the publication of Second Banana, the bittersweet memoirs of the Sanford and Son years. The book offered a frank and honest look at his years on the iconic show, exploring both the joys and the pains of that transformative experience. Wilson described it as a documented truth, a factual behind-the-scenes account of what happened during those years. He emphasized that he and Red Fox were making history, being the first blacks to appear on television in that capacity as leads of a major sitcom, opening doors for all the shows that came after them, like The Jeffersons, Good Times, and numerous others. The book was not an attack on Fox, but rather an attempt to preserve the truth of an important era in American television history and to process his own complex feelings about those years. As for Wilson's financial situation, after decades of extreme highs and lows, the picture is modest compared to some of his television contemporaries. Various financial sources estimate his net worth between $1.5 and $2.5 million as of 2023 and 2024. It is a comfortable amount that provides financial security, but it is significantly less than the fortunes accumulated by other television stars of his generation who maintained more consistent careers in entertainment. The difference reflects the harsh realities of Wilson's particular journey. Money lost to cocaine addiction in the early 1980s, years of intermittent work after Sanford and Son when his subsequent shows failed, and the conscious choices he made to prioritize ministry work over maximizing financial gain. Wilson could have continued pursuing acting roles in Hollywood more aggressively, could have capitalized more commercially on his Sanford and Son fame, but he chose a different path. He chose meaning over money, purpose over prestige, service over stardom. His decision to become a minister meant turning away from many lucrative opportunities, but for Wilson, it was a trade worth making. Today, at 78 years old, Demond Wilson remains married to Cicely Johnston, in a marriage that somehow survived the storms of cocaine addiction, infidelity, and the intense pressures of Hollywood fame. The couple has 6 children together, and their family has remained intact despite the challenges that destroyed many other celebrity marriages. Wilson frequently credits his stable upbringing and the example of his own parents, who were married for nearly 70 years, as the foundation that eventually allowed him to rebuild his own family after nearly destroying it. He continues his involvement in ministerial work, making regular appearances on the Praise the Lord program on Trinity Broadcasting Network, alongside longtime friends like Clifton Davis. In his preaching and public speaking, Wilson openly references his past, using his experiences with fame, addiction, infidelity, and spiritual transformation as powerful tools to motivate and inspire others who are facing their own battles with addiction, marital problems, or spiritual emptiness. He does not hide who he was but celebrates who he has become, offering himself as living proof that transformation is possible no matter how far someone has fallen. Wilson has not completely abandoned performance. In 2011, he appeared in a touring theatrical production called The Measure of a Man, written by playwright Matt Hardwick and described as a faith-based production set in a small town in South Georgia. He starred alongside actress Nina Nicole, demonstrating that although he had left Hollywood behind, his love for performance and storytelling had never completely died. More recently, in 2023, Wilson made a brief return to television with a role in the series Eleanor's Bench, proving that even in his late 70s he still has something to offer as an artist. But these occasional forays into the entertainment world are clearly secondary to his primary vocation. As Wilson himself has stated in interviews, he travels around preaching the Lord's gospel, and that is what he does. If God wants him to do a film or be a pastor, they will have to wrestle a little bit, but he will do whatever God wants him to do. And in another interview, he stated without hesitation that he loves preaching more than anything else he has ever done, more than acting, more than the fame and fortune of his Sanford and Son years. Damon Wilson's trajectory is fundamentally a story of radical transformation and redemption. He achieved significant fame in Hollywood with Sanford and Son, becoming one of the most recognized faces on American television in the 1970s. He fell into severe cocaine addiction that consumed $1,000 per week and nearly destroyed his personal life, his marriage, and his future. He experienced professional failures with Baby I'm Back and The New Odd Couple that seemed to suggest his star had faded. He endured the painful dissolution of his friendship with Red Fox, carrying the weight of unresolved hurt until Fox's death made reconciliation impossible. But through all of this, Wilson found recovery and transformation through religious faith, fulfilling the promise he had made to God as a dying 13-year-old boy decades earlier. He traded the possibility of greater wealth and continued fame in Hollywood for ministerial work that he considers infinitely more meaningful and satisfying. He is no longer in the headlines as he was in the 1970s, no longer the young funny face of Lamont Sanford, appearing on millions of television screens every week. But according to his own statements, he has found peace and purpose that transcend the fleeting fame of his time as a television star. Are you enjoying this story, Damon Wilson? Then help the channel with your subscription. Look, 94.8% of the people who watch these videos are still not subscribed to the channel. If you are part of that group, take the chance and subscribe now. It's free, and that way you'll keep receiving amazing stories from TV shows we still miss. Oh, and don't forget, at the end of the video, you'll find more stories like this one. His financial condition, while comfortable, does not reflect the massive fortunes of some other stars of his generation, but Wilson appears genuinely at peace with the choices he made and the path he has traveled since leaving the entertainment world to dedicate himself to ministry and faith. His story serves as a reminder that success can be measured in many ways, and that the most important transformations often happen when we lose everything and are forced to rebuild on a completely new foundation.